Hello, welcome back, dear students. Previously, we have covered the concept, theory, and functions of diffusion and osmosis. Today, we shall discuss water potential thoroughly. So, let's start with our first topic, that is water potential. And if you still did not subscribe to this channel, then do it and stay subscribed to be updated about new video lectures. Up till now, we have used words like dilute and concentrated, but in high-level biology, we use a much more precise term that is called water potential, which is represented by a Greek letter. Okay, this is the Greek letter that denotes water potential. Think of water potential as a measure of the free energy of water molecules. It tells us with a number exactly how likely our solution is to lose or gain water. So here is the golden rule, that is the pure water. Okay, pure water has the highest possible water potential. You should be very attentive in listening this lecture, okay, because this is a bit different from osmosis and diffusion process. Okay, so the golden rule here is that pure water has the highest uh, possible water potential, which we define as zero. Highest water potential, okay, and this is the zero. In pure water, every single molecule is free to move because they have nowhere to go but down. They will always flow away from pure water and into any other solution. Now what happens when we add solutes like sugar or salt in this pure water? As we saw earlier, solutes capture water molecules. When these capture water molecules, this reduces the free energy. And because 0 is the maximum, adding solutes pulls the number down into the negatives. Okay. Then if we add solutes in this pure water, then the water potential will go down, that will be negative. So the more concentrated a solution gets, the lower or more negative the water potential becomes. So a very salty solution might have a water potential of -1000. Okay, the rule of movement here is very simple. Water always moves from a region of higher water potential to a region of lower water potential. It is just like a ball rolling down a hill, but we call it moving down a water potential gradient. So if you can master the 0 to negative scale, you can solve easily any osmosis problem the examiners throw at you. Okay, if examiner asks you about any question about solving an osmosis problem, you can easily respond to that question if you understand the 0 to negative scale. Now look that we have understood what water potential is. Let's look at how it creates movement. In biology, things rarely stay still. When two environments like two cells sitting right next to each other, they have different amounts of solutes. So they establish what we call a water potential gradient. Think of this gradient as a pressure slide. On one end, you have higher water potential. This is your dilute area with lots of free water molecules. Okay, these are free water molecules and these are solute molecules. You can see that this is the dilute solution with high water potential. Here solute molecules are lesser than the water molecules. On the other end, you have lower water potential. This is your concentrated area where most of the water is captured by solutes. So the rule of the universe is that water will always move from high to low potential. In our diagram, look at cell A and cell B. Cell A is less concentrated, so its number is close to 0. while cell B, this is very salty or sugary. So its number is a deep negative because cell A has the higher potential. Water will naturally flow from cell A into cell B. This gradient is the invisible driving force behind almost everything in a plant. It is how water climbs from the roots all the way to the leaves of a giant tree, and it is how your own body ensures every cell stays hydrated. So whenever you see a difference in concentration, stop and ask yourself, where is the water potential higher? Once you find that, you have found the starting point for the water's journey. As we have looked at the math of water potential, now let's see it in action. How does a massive tree pull tons of water out of the ground without a mechanical pump or a heart? It is all down to a beautiful chain reaction of water potential. It starts in the soil. Okay, usually soil water is quite dilute, which means it has a relatively high water potential. Dilute means high water potential. Then we have the root hair cells. Root hair cells. These are the plant's primary intake walls. Inside their vacuoles, means cell vacuoles, the plant purposefully keeps a high concentration of dissolved sugars and salts. This makes the root hair cell have a lower water potential. I repeat it. The cell vacuoles have high concentration of dissolved sugars and salts. If the concentration of these solutes, which are sugar and salts, is higher, then it means there are less number of free water molecules. If less number of free water molecules, then the water potential will be lower in comparison to the soil. Because water always moves from a high concentration to a low concentration, it rushes into the root hair cell by the process of osmosis. But here is where it gets clever. As that first cell fills with water, its water potential rises, that increases. It now has a higher potential than the next cell over in the cortex. So the water moves again. This creates a continuous water potential gradient across the root. So water is handed off from cell to cell like a bucket brigade, moving deeper and deeper into the plant until it reaches the xylem, which is in the center. Okay, so the xylem is like a high speed elevator. Xylem is like a high speed elevator that whisk the water up to the leaves. So by simply maintaining a lower potential inside its roots than in the soil, the plant creates a suction that never stops. This is a masterpiece of biological engineering. By understanding this picture, you can understand the movement of water from the roots to its canopy, okay, even to the till the apex of this tree. To finish our unit, let's look at this master comparison table. Okay, if you can memorize these four rows, you will never get confused by a water potential question again. First of all, let's look at solute concentration. Okay, this is the solute concentration. Okay, a high water potential means you have a low concentration of solutes. It's a dilute solution. Conversely, a low water potential means the solution is high in solutes, like very salty water or thick syrup. Okay, I just repeat it for your understanding that lower water potential, what does that mean? Low water potential means the solution is high and water molecules are less. So lesser water molecules, water potential is low. Higher water molecules, then water potential is higher, but solute concentration is lower. Secondly, think about the free water molecules. Okay, free water molecules in high potential area. In a high potential area, you have many free water molecules zipping around. but in a low water potential area you have a very few, because most of them are captured and handcuffed to the solutes. And number three, this is the part that trips everyone up, that is the numerical value. A high water potential is always closer to zero. A high water potential is always closer to zero. So remember, zero is the maximum. As you add more solutes in that pure water, the value becomes more negative. So a low water potential is a number like minus 200 or even minus 500. So finally, is the direction of flow. Water is like a person leaving a crowded room for a quieter one. Okay, water is like a person leaving a crowded room for a quieter one. It always leaves the area of high water potential and enters the area of low water potential. So if you see a negative number on your exam, negative number of water potential on your exam, do not get panic. Just remember, the closer it is to zero, the higher it is, and that is where the water is coming from. Now, I just want to check your concept that if cell A, my question is, if cell A has a water potential of minus 150 and cell B has a water potential of minus 450, in which direction will the water move? Answer this question in the comments section. Okay, I'm waiting for your response. Uh, Dear students, have you ever wondered that how a soft green plant stays upright without a skeleton of bone or a hard shell? We have discussed that in my previous lecture. Okay, so here is also a quick recap because we want to move further. Okay, the secret behind that upright plant without a skeleton is the Turgor pressure. In many ways, water is the plant's internal skeleton. Okay, first of all, let's look at turgid cells. When a plant has plenty of water, it creates a high water potential. When a plant has a plenty of water, it creates a high water potential outside the cell. Water rushes then into the vacuole by osmosis. As the vacuole swells, it pushes the cytoplasm hard against the rigid, inelastic cell wall. Think of it like blowing up a balloon inside a cardboard box. Okay, the balloon pushes against the sides of the box, making the whole structure incredibly firm. This internal pressure is what keeps stems standing tall, and leaves are spread out wide to catch every bit of sunlight. However, look at what happens in flaccid cells. Okay, flaccid cells. If the plant loses water, perhaps on a very hot day, or when the plant is thirsty, the vacuole shrinks. You can compare. Okay, this is a vacuole of turgid cell. This is a vacuole of a flaccid cell. It no longer then when it shrinks down, it no longer pushes against the wall. Okay, against the cell wall, so the balloon has lost its air, for example. Okay, the balloon has lost its air and the box becomes floppy. When this happens to millions of cells at once, this function happens to millions of cells at once, we see the visible result. Okay, that is wilting. So the leaves become limp and the stem droops. The plant has literally lost its structural support because it has lost its internal water pressure. So for a plant, a drink of water is not just about thirst, it's about staying strong and standing tall. In your book and even in your exam, you can also find the terms of hypotonic, isotonic, and hypertonic. Okay, so hypotonic, that is turgid cell, isotonic is flaccid cell, and hypertonic, that is plasmolyzed. Okay, or the wilting situation. We know that water moves from high to low water potential. Okay, now let's see how the plant uses this physics rule to drink. So for a plant to survive, it must maintain a constant water potential gradient between the earth, means between the soil and its roots. So under normal conditions, the water in the soil is relatively dilute. It has very few dissolved minerals, which means it has a high water potential. Inside the plant, however, the root hair cell sap is quite concentrated with sugar and salts, means solutes. Because because the soil is high, and the root is low in terms of water potential. Okay, water moves into the plant naturally by osmosis process. The plant does not have to spend any energy to make this happen. This is a passive transport system. It is a free gift from physics. But look at the hair root hair strategy. These cells are not these cells are not just normal cells. Okay, they are highly specialized. They have long finger like, you can see it here. Okay, they have long finger like projections which increase their surface area, allowing them to touch more soil water at once. More importantly here is that the plant actively keeps the water potential inside these cells lower than the surrounding, to trap more soil water. Okay, so by staying salty or sugary inside, the root ensures there is a constant inward flow. It is like a biological vacuum cleaner that never turns off. So as long as the soil stays more dilute than the root, the water will keep rushing in, providing the hydration and pressure the plant needs to stay alive. We have seen how plants use water potential to thrive, but human activities can accidentally flip this script. We can create what I call the salt trap, which is a situation where we reverse the water potential gradient and force plants to lose water to the soil. First of all, let's look at the over fertilization. Many farmers think more is better. But chemical fertilizers are essentially salts. If you apply too much of this fertilizer, the concentration of solutes in the soil water shoots up. That increases. So what will be the result? The soil's water potential drops below that of the root cells. So instead of water flowing into the plant, it is pulled out of the roots and into the soil. So this causes rapid dehydration and it can kill an entire crop overnight. Secondly, consider irrigation side effects. In hot, dry climates, farmers irrigate their land. But as the sun beats down, the water evaporates, leaving behind tiny amounts of minerals. So over years, these minerals build up a process, which is a process called salination. Okay, so eventually the land becomes toxic. The soil water potential becomes so low, that is so negative, that no crop or no matter how thirsty it is, it can absorb a single drop of water. Okay, it cannot absorb even a single drop of water. And finally, there is road salting. In winter, we use salts to melt ice for safety. Okay, this usually happen in those regions where which receive a lot of snowfall. Okay, like in Europe, in Canada. Okay, so but when that salty slush splashes into the soil at the roadside, it creates a high salt environment. So the what will be the result? The roadside vegetation loses water through osmotic water loss, which is why you often see brown dead grass along highways in the spring. In all three cases, the physics is the same. Humans accidentally made the soil more attractive to water than the plant itself. It is a powerful reminder that in biology, balance is everything. To wrap up our study of plant water movement, let's look at three level word scenarios. This table is a perfect summary because it connects the soil condition to the water potential and ultimately the survival of the plant. First of all, let's look at healthy soil. In a natural balanced environment, the soil water potential is higher than the root. Because water moves from high to low, it flows into the plant. The result is the vacuoles stay full, the cells stay turgid, and the plant stands tall and healthy. Number two, second scenario is the high fertilizer scenario, as we just discussed in previous slide. So as we have learned, adding too much chemical salt can drop the soil water potential until it is lower than the root. Now the gradient is reversed. Water moves out of the plant and you will see the plant begin wilting and drooping because it has lost its internal skeleton of water pressure. And finally, the most extreme case, that is a salinated land or saline land. This is land where salt has built up over many years. The soil water potential is now much lower than the root water potential. So water is pulled rapidly out of the plant and the cells cannot recover. This leads to total dehydration and eventually the death of the crop. So if you can remember these three, okay, these three outcomes, you can master any exam question about how humans and the environment affect plant life. It is all a game of numbers. Keep the soil potential higher than the root water potential, and in that case, the plant will stay alive. So here is a critical thinking for you. Okay, uh, as a comparison between bends and wilting. Okay, you can just easily understand that earlier we have looked at nitrogen bubbles in divers like the bends, and now water loss in plants. Both are caused by a change in concentration gradients, one involving gas pressure and the other involving solute potential. In both cases, the organism suffers because the external environment changed faster than the body could adapt. Now, what is the importance of water potential? So, in the plant world, we have seen that a cell wall acts like a protective suit of armor. But what happens in the animal kingdom? We do not have that luxury, that is cell wall. So our cells are soft, flexible, and entirely dependent on the fluid that bathes them, like our blood plasma or the tissue fluid between our muscles. So let's look at what happens in a hypotonic environment. Okay, hypotonic environment. This is an environment with a higher water potential than the cell. For example, pure water. Because the water potential outside is higher, water rushes into the cell by osmosis and the cell begins to swell like a water balloon being overfilled. But because animal cells lack a rigid wall, they have no way to stop the expansion. So eventually the membrane reaches its limit and it bursts. Okay, this is here. And this destruction in red blood cells, we have a specific name for it, that is hemolysis. This is not just a theory, it has a major medical application. If a surgeon is rinsing a wound during an operation, they can never use water. Okay, they can never use water. Why? Because the pure water would cause all the exposed tissue cells to undergo hemolysis and die. Instead, they use a saline solution, salt water, that is carefully matched to the exact water potential of your body's cells. So in medicine, keeping the water potential balanced is quite literally the difference between healing a patient and harming them. Next one is hypertonic environment. Let's look at this is the opposite problem of hypotonic. Okay, what happens when the fluid surrounding our cells become too concentrated? This occurs during heavy sweating, severe dehydration, or if you were to drink salty seawater. That is the reason we cannot drink salty seawater. So, this environment is called as hypertonic environment. In a hypertonic solution, in a hypertonic environment, the water potential outside the cell is lower than the cytoplasm inside because water always moves from high to low water concentration, it rushes out of the cell. So as the cell loses its internal volume, it begins to shrink. But it does not just get smaller, its surface becomes wrinkled, notched, and jagged. So in biology, we call this state as crenation. Okay, we call this as crenation. So think of it like a grape turning into a raisin. But for a red blood cell, this is not just a change. This is not just a change in looks, it's a change in its function. A healthy red blood cell is a smooth biconcave disc designed to carry maximum oxygen. Once it undergoes carnation, its surface area is reduced. Okay, its surface area is reduced and its shape is ruined. It becomes far less efficient at carrying the oxygen your body needs to survive. This is why doctors monitor your hydration so closely. Your blood is not just a liquid, it is a carefully balanced chemical environment. If that balance flips to hypertonic, from hypertonic to hypertonic, or you can say that from a balanced environment to a hypertonic, your every cell begins to shrivel and fail. To wrap up our look at osmosis in animals and single-celled organisms, let's look at how life handles these extreme challenges. First of all, consider the amoeba. These tiny single-celled organisms live in fresh water. Because fresh water has a much higher water potential than their cytoplasm, they are constantly under the threat of bursting. So how do they stay alive? They use a specialized organelle called contractile vacuole, okay, which we call as contractile vacuole. You can see contractile vacuole here. Okay, this is contractile vacuole. Think of it as a biological sump pump. It acts as a collection tank, okay, as a collection tank that constantly gathers excess water from the cytoplasm and then physically squirts it back out through the membrane. It's a beautiful active solution to a passive physical problem. But humans do not have contractile vacuoles. We do not have contractile vacuoles. We rely on our kidneys to maintain a balance, and that process we call as osmoregulation. However, this system can be overwhelmed. A tragic real-world example is the case of Lee Betts. After drinking a massive, unnatural amount of water in a very short time, her blood became extremely overdiluted, and this created a dangerous water potential gradient. Because her blood was now higher than her brain cells, water rushed into her brain tissue by osmosis. So unlike other parts of your body, your brain is trapped inside a rigid bone skull. As the cell began to swell, they had nowhere to go. So the resulting pressure led to fatal brain damage. So it is a sobering reminder that while water is the essence of life, even pure water can be a poison if it destroys the delicate osmotic balance our cells require to function. To wrap up our look at human health, we have to talk about how certain diseases can actually hijack the laws of osmosis to cause harm. So a prime example is cholera. Cholera is a bacterial infection of the small intestine, and it works like a deadly chain reaction. First of all, the cholera bacterium releases a powerful toxin into your gut. This toxin acts like a key that unlocks the wrong gates in your intestinal cells. It forces your cells to pump out chloride ions into the space where your food is being digested. And suddenly, the water math of your body is broken. By dumping all those ions into the gut, the bacterium causes the water potential of the gut contents to drop significantly. So it becomes a highly concentrated, low water potential zone. Now remember, the rule of movement. Okay, do you remember that water follows the solute. Okay, water follows the solute because the gut now has a lower potential than your blood and tissues. A massive amount of water is drawn out of your body and into your intestine. The result is a sudden massive loss of water through watery phases known as diarrhea. So without treatment, a patient can become dangerously dehydrated in just a few hours. So how do we fight back? We use oral rehydration therapy, which we also call as ORT, oral rehydration therapy. These are not just salty drinks. These are precisely balanced sachets of salts and glucose. By drinking this specific ratio, we help the body pull those ions back into the cells, restoring the correct water potential and stopping the lethal flow of water out of the body. It is a simple, life-saving solution based entirely on the physics of osmosis. Again, wrapping up with a real world example. Okay, look at human osmotic balance. Let's talk about something you see every day, that is sports drinks. Okay, when we exercise vigorously, we are not just losing water, we are losing vital salts and burning up glucose for energy. This is where isotonic drinks come in. You have probably seen that word on the bottle. But what does it actually mean? Isotonic drinks. What does that mean? An isotonic drink is mathematically designed to have the exact same water potential as your body fluids. And because the potential is matched, these drinks allow for the fastest possible rehydration. They replace your lost water, and your salts means electrolytes, and your energy, that is glucose, all at once, means they replace your loss in water, salts and energy all at once, and without causing your cells to shrink or swell. This is a perfect even exchange that keeps your muscles working up at their peak. However, there is a downside. If you are not actually doing vigorous exercise, if you are just sitting at your desk or playing video games, your body does not need that extra boost. And because these drinks are packed with sugar to provide quick energy for athletes, drinking them like regular soda can lead to unintended weight gain. So, in the word of biology, a sports drink, an isotonic drink, is a tool for maintaining osmotic balance during stress. If there is no stress, that balance just becomes extra calories. So, next time, if you reach for an isotonic drink, remember, you are not just drinking a flavor, you are drinking a carefully calculated biological formula. So, to bring our study of animal cells to a close, let's look at this master summary. If you can distinguish between these three tonic words, you have mastered the biology of human hydration. First of all is the isotonic environment. In this state, the surrounding fluid has the same water potential as the cell's cytoplasm. And because the potential is balanced, there is no net movement of water. The cell stays its perfect, healthy shape. Okay. This is the goal for our blood and tissues. Secondly, we have the hypotonic environment. This means the fluid outside has a high water potential. It is more dilute than the cell. So water rushes in and the cell swells, because we have no cell wall to stop it, the cell pops, it bursts. And remember the technical term, that is hemolysis. Okay, that is the bursting of red blood cells. And finally is the hypertonic environment. Here the fluid outside has a lower water potential. It is very concentrated. Lower water potential means very concentrated, and water is pulled out of the cell, causing it to shrivel and become jagged. We call this serenation. Okay, so, or shrinking. So it cannot do its a shrunk cell cannot do its job properly, which is why dehydration makes us feel so weak. And whether you are a doctor, you are a nurse, or you are an athlete, these three rows means isotonic, hypertonic, and hypertonic. These three rows represent the fundamental rules of keeping a body alive and healthy. Okay, my dear students, with this slide, we have completed the mechanics of osmosis and how water potential plays its role in maintaining turgor pressure and keep the plant and animal cells alive. If you have any query, you can ask me in the comment section. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, then do it to get lectures regularly on your YouTube feed. See you in next video where I shall deliver my lecture on active transport. See you then. Goodbye and best wishes. Thank you.